So what's really the difference between ratios and fractions? They seem like the same thing. It really boils down to how you use things. So let's say you have a recipe and you're going to use maybe 6 teaspoons of sugar, and you are going to use um, 8 teaspoons of salt. Okay, so here's 6 spoons of sugar, and so this was sugar. So this was here uh, sugar, and here is salt. Okay, so all that you're doing is that you could say, since a ratio, so you could say there are two things that you could say. You could divide the salt by the sugar. That's certainly possible. You could say salt over sugar. Certainly do that. That salt is going to be 8 divided by 6, which is equal to 4 over 3. So dividing salt by sugar doesn't really have a very nice interpretation. It's not commonly thought of. So maybe you don't want to think about it this way. Probably a better way to think about it would be to think of the ratio of salt to sugar in your recipe, because that is 8 is to 6, which is equal to 4 is to 3. So what that really means is that whenever you see 4 salts that you use, so here are 4 salts that I'm going to use, you're going to get 3 sugars. And if you use more 4 salts, then you again going to use 3 sugars. So the ratio is really, in some sense, telling you how the recipe scales, and that's sort of the difference. It boils down to the difference in how we use it, because this number 4/3, while it can be interpreted if we wanted to as a ratio, it's very unnatural to divide salt by sugar to have something meaningful in recipes. So let's see a few more examples. So, for example, let's think about it. If you want to talk about gender equality, so then maybe you want to talk about the ratio of boys to girls, right? So, gender equality would mean that you want the ratio to be nearly 1 to 1, so that for every boy you have a girl. If you want to, so for that, I would probably talk about ratios. That makes more sense. If you want to distribute apples among children, let's say you want to, apples are being distributed among children, then what you probably want to do is you want to think of the same thing as division. So let's think about it. If the ratio of boys to girls is maybe 3 is to 2, so boys to girls is equal to 3 is to 2. Okay, so that means that if you choose a unit, then there are going to be 3 units of boys and 2 units of girls, right? So, but now if I look at, let's say, apples per child, which is the same phenomena. So let's say if I'm looking at apples per child, apples, and I divide it by children, and I get the answer 3/2, which really means that I'm getting 3/2 apples per child. So it's a more natural way to think about division when we're thinking of distributing stuff and doing things like that. When we're looking at some kind of a proportion, and we'll explain more about proportions, some kind of a recipe, some kind of gender equality, then it may make sense to talk about how much have you contributed. If you're looking at contributions, then it may make sense to talk about ratios. As you see the problems, you'll see that the problems involving ratios have a slightly different feel as compared to the problems involving division.